think now we can begin. And like the program mentions, we're going to have the social media engagement, how to build your social engagement, and how to get started with content creation. And we'll be led by Eunice Kilonzo, who I'm just going to give a brief bio so that you see that you're in a masterclass being taught by actual master tutors. So Eunice Kilonzo is a communications and social media specialist, currently a manager and content generation at Safaricom PLC. Her immediate role was with the UN Environment Program, which is the UNEP headquarters in Nairobi, Kenya, and she was a social media and content consultant. So apart from that, she actually develops content for herself as a hobby as well as for work purposes. So we are in very good and capable hands. So without further ado, I would like to invite Eunice Kilonzo to come talk to us a bit about how to get started with content creation. So Eunice, karibu.
Hey, thank you. Thanks so much, Mara. Sometimes when you hear people introducing you, like, oh my gosh, is that me? Yeah, so as Mara is setting up my slide, I mean, as you've heard from the presentation, from the introduction, is that I've been telling stories and I've been doing content generation for a while. I think close to, if I think way back, maybe close to 15 years. I started doing this on my phone, a tiny little Nokia 2630 with a tiny little screen, but I used to blog and used to write on that, and it really set me on the stage to start doing content, and just the curiosity around how to do it, how best to do it, what are some of the lessons to pick. So yeah, so I'm hoping that from our discussion, you guys will you'll also appreciate why we can all be content creators, and for those who've done it, some of the lessons that we can bring on board, and then some of the things we can unlearn and relearn. And I think I liked what let me see, I wrote her name, Carol. She said that she's been producing radio content, and now more and more people are getting into digital. So what does that mean for her? And I'm hoping that this is a discussion that will also be beneficial to you. So straight up, content creator, when people think about content creators, they think of them as, influencers, as people who, they are cool looking. Well, we can't be cool looking, or, it looks a certain kind of way. But the beauty of content creation is that it's something that everyone can learn, everyone can do, everyone can try out. So I think, what was her name? Asenat, I think she mentioned, Ashnat, she mentioned that for her, she's keen to find out, okay, the digital space, how does she tell her story, and the work that you're doing around social justice. So I'm hoping that from this discussion, you'll get an insights of how to go about it. Onto my second slide, content creation. When people say content creation, second slide. Yeah, so when people talk about content creation, simply they're talking about storytelling. So you have an idea, which then becomes content, and then now you want to bring it to life. So you're going to tell that story. So and sometimes you'll hear this interchangeably. Oh, I'm a storyteller, or I'm a content creator. They're saying the same thing. What they're really simply saying is that they find ideas, and then they tell those ideas, and they give those ideas life. And I'll show you how to do that. So onto the third slide. So content creation and really stories have four main basic elements. The character. Who is your character? Here is who are the people, who are the voices. Why do we need voices and characters? So that you can, to humanize the issue. I'll give you an example. When you're thinking about, I'd imagine, the psychologists in the room. For them, the characters are either the psychologists themselves, or the people who need their services. So you need to know who your character is, so that you can humanize, and then also to empathize, putting yourself in their shoes. What are they looking for? What do they need? How can they get it? The other thing about content and stories is that, still on the same slide, sorry, is the setting. Where is this happening? Where is the place? None of these things happen in isolation. Is it in space, for instance? Is it on the ground? So you need to be able to tell my story or my content exists within this particular setting. And the other key element in content and stories is the action or the conflict. So here is a tug of war. Someone wants something, someone needs something, but they can't get it. And so what this means is that you'll see this a lot with even in adverts, in how brands or organizations are telling their story. They're saying this community, so the character, these people want clean water. In Kitui, for instance, the setting, the conflict is that they want clean water, but the water they have is not clean. It's dirty, it's infested. So then the goal is to address this conflict. This is how we are solving it. This is how we have done it. Or this is how the community has found a way around their problem. So if you forget anything else or everything else from this chart is that for whatever you do in content, and those who've been doing content production will tell you, you have these 4 key things that will guide you. And you'll see how this helps even when you're thinking about your digital content. If you're thinking about, if it's a podcast, if it's a video, you need to have these 4 things in mind. And these slides will be shared, so you'll also get to just review that and see. So now that you know what are the 4 basic elements, why then do we do content generation? Why then do we do storytelling? We do it so that we can change the way your audience thinks, feels, and acts. Keywords here, change. So these guys, people are thinking in a certain kind of way, but now you want to change that in a way that will make them think differently, feel differently, and act differently. This I'll give an example. Before we move to the next slide, I'll give an example with Kenyans probably know Edgar Obare. Edgar Obare has been doing stories, on his Instagram platform, on his account, telling stories about different things. And the most recent one, I think the hottest one, that actually got his account suspended. And now I think his brother was kidnapped. He's changing how we think about, the wealth, quote unquote, wealth of people we see in Nairobi, on social media. He's making us think differently. He's making us feel, you're thinking, okay, clearly there's a lot of money, but it's not in my pocket, and it's not being, gotten in the right way. And it's making us act. And here in the action, I mean, look, his account is suspended. People are talking about it days, weeks after. So he knows what content generation is, and he knows clearly where he wants to, what he wants his audience to do. So, so for you as content creators or storytellers, you need to be very clear. What change are you hoping your audience will have? How do you want them to think, feel, and act differently than they were before? And so how then do you prepare? Now that you know what you want your content, what you want your audience to do, how do you prepare? And for me, I'd say for you to prepare is 5 critical things. So the next slide. For you to prepare on how to do your content generation, you need to be curious. You need to stay curious, because curiosity means you will be seeing things differently. You'll be noticing, you'll be reaching out, you'll be saying, oh, people are on TikTok. What are they doing on TikTok? What are they learning? Can I come in? You might not create TikTok videos, but you're in there to learn. So for you to be a good content creator, to be a good storyteller, you need to be very, very curious. You need to, step out of your comfort zone and say, okay, so how do people do things? So curiosity, for me, tops the list. It's a very, very important element. And I'm glad for those who some guys were saying, I would want to learn, I've been doing this before, but I would want to see if there are other skills. You're curious, you're staying curious. So that helps a lot. For you also to be a good content creator, you need to be relevant. And relevance here is something that is of proximity to your audience. I'll explain. So if you're let's say you're a content creator who wants to tell or who wants to do content around psychology, or you want to do stuff around social justice, or you want to do stuff around, digital equality and safety of women online, what is relevant to your audience? Why should they, the so what? Why should they care, or why does it matter to them? Being able to identify that, it's relevant because many young women, for instance, are getting online, they're using social media. So then it matters to them that if social media and social media platforms are not safe, then it hurts me. So you need to know the relevance and proximity of your content in relation to your audience. And then novel, something new. for most of this new content, most of this content that we consume on social media, you're hooked because it's new, because it's novel. We are hooked to Edgar Obare because he's always bringing us new things. We are hooked to Abel Mutua because of his new way of telling his story. So we need to find, looking at the platforms that are there, or the content that is there, what is new that you're bringing on board. And of course, the impact. How many people will either learn or need your help, or they need your story. So you need to be able to identify the impact and ultimately the audience, because you're not telling this story for yourself. You're telling it for other people. So what do they want? What do they need? How can you tell their story in a way that relates to them? And so I have a little cheat code of how, so that's the next slide. Is there a cheat code then? How then do you do it? Is there a cheat code for you to do it quickly, faster, easier? And the cheat code, the next slide, it's from the Pixar pitch. So for those who know Pixar, they are a content generation platform. They tell beautiful stories, they tell animations, and all of their stories follow a particular pitch. They follow a particular formula. And there's a link at the bottom there, the YouTube video, where you can get more details. But as I told you, you get the slides. But the easiest way for you to tell stories, and I know this because I was a journalist at the Daily Nation, now Nation Africa, and when people tell you, how do you tell this story? How do you identify a story? I will tell you the easiest way to do it, whichever content that you're thinking about, this is the simplest way, in just 6 simple sentences. Once upon a time, and you don't have to say it in these words. Once upon a time, there was a young person or a young woman who wanted to use the social media to tell their story online. And so every day they would wake up, they would tell, they would do tweets, or they do videos, or do da. One day, hackers got into her account, and so and then the hackers got into her account. They started asking her followers to send them money, and because of that, she lost access to her account, and so people were defrauded from her account, and because of that, she was blacklisted. So people said, "Oh, don't if Eunice writes to you, her account has been hacked." Until finally she found a way of solving it. You see, so it's very simple. Whichever content you're thinking about, you can use this format. So once upon a time, there was, a community that had democracy, and every day, However, one day, a ruthless leader did. So for you and the work that you're doing, you can use this format. Psychology. Once upon a time, there was a young man who, he was very ambitious. He went to university. He knew what he wanted to. He wanted to become a doctor, whatever. Then one day he discovered that, he discovered he had an addiction, or whatever. So because of that, and so you can use this format for whatever it is. And if you can't even take a screenshot of this, and just look at the content that you see around you. Everybody is using this format, maybe not the same in those 6 words or 6 sentences, but in different ways. That's the easiest way for you to do your content generation. So then, now that you know how to do it, so what formats then can you use? Using the Pixar formula, onto the next slide. So the formats that you can easily use, I've given 5, but there can be more. So the easiest format for you to tell your stories, or to tell your content, or to package and to generate your content, is using visual stories. So this could be in terms of photos. We see photo stories. We see people doing really nice, especially you see this on Instagram, you see this on Facebook, people doing, and brands are jumping onto this. So photos, online videos. So think about, social media on YouTube and the different platforms on the website and such. Long form documentary. So you see this a lot with people who are doing, social impact work. We went in, remember the Pixar formula. We went in. This was the issue. This is how it was solved, and this is how it looks like, and the goal and etc. So long form documentary, illustrations. Pixar does this very well. Animations as well. Infographics, and I know for especially when you want to compress as much information as possible, data and such. So you can use infographics. So they help to tell a compelling story. The other format that you can tell your story is text writing. So platforms that exist for this include Medium, include Twitter threads. So you can use text in very many ways and in very many platforms, and you can mix them, so you have text and then you have a visual story and such. The other way that people are telling their story, or they're sharing content, is through audio. So here, think about podcasts, think about Twitter Spaces, think about radio. So those are platforms, and you can you can have a multimedia where you have everything intertwined and to tell a wholesome multimedia story. The other new way, or a way for you to tell the format to tell your story, is through new media and through experiential. And here new media talks about social media, and I think for me the best platform for you to learn how to do content generation is TikTok. I know there are people who would say, but oh, TikTok is only for young people, and for this kind of, just go in, have an open mind. What we talked about, the curiosity, go in with an open mind and be curious, and just go in and learn. You will get a lot of information in like 30 seconds. So that is a very good platform, and it's something for you to try. I mean, you don't have to get it right, and that's okay. I've burnt my hand a couple of times on TikTok. I put in a video, I'm like, oh, maybe this doesn't make sense. I take it down, I re-edit it. So that's a platform for you to try, because digital, that's where more and more people are consuming content. So you need to be where people are for you to tell them to access your story. And of course, augmented reality and virtual reality are also new platforms for you to tell story. And for this example, I'll give an example of Tom's. Tom's, they sell and they make shoes, and they distribute it across the world. So just look for Tom's plus virtual reality, and you'll see how they're using newer media to tell their story, or to generate and create their content. And then finally, in person, formats where you're meeting people and they ask you, so what do you do, or what do you sell, or so it's in person, so you're able to tell your content in person, and in a way that resonates with your audience. And here in person also includes interviews, media interviews, job interviews, packaging yourself. So now that so these visual aspects, the platforms that you can use for you to tell these stories, the best platforms I would advise anyone who's thinking about content generation is Canva. Canva is your friend. Canva is my best friend. I develop all my slides, everything on Canva. You can use the free version, still works pretty well. You can have a paid up version, works brilliantly. Like you can get, literally, if you're thinking, I want to create a video, Canva gives you a format to use. I want to do an infographic, you'll get it on. So if you can, please sign up on Canva. If you don't use it already, if you're thinking of using it, please go in and use it. The other way that for you to do your stories is on your mobile phone. We all have a mobile phone. We are all accessing internet. So by virtue of that, you can download apps that will help you edit and do any of these formats. And then, of course, new media. As I said, TikTok is your friend also. Go in, learn from TikTok. Up to that point, then I want to shift gears and go into the myths around content generation. People are always saying, oh, content generation must be very easy. And I'll expound on that. So on to the next slide. What are some of the myths about content generation? People always say, oh, more is always better, put as much information as possible, no, actually, sometimes less is more, and that's where infographics, illustrations, animations work really well. You don't need to have everything, huge text. Shorter is always better. However, there are some times where longer is also good. So you remember when you talked about the long documentaries. So sometimes people have time, can take time to do long reads and such. And a person who does this really well is Biko Zulu. He does writing long form pieces, and you go in and, he entices you in a very short sentence. And then once you go in, you find out, oh, wow, there's so much more. So less is more, shorter, but also sometimes longer is better. The other myth that people have is anyone can write or anyone can be a great content, creator. Well, yes and no. Yes, anyone can do it, but no, not everyone can do it. You need to, the creativity aspect, you need to have vision. What exactly am I hoping to achieve? You need to build your skills. So if you're not a good writer, then you need to start writing so that you can be a great content creator. If you're not a good videographer, you need to learn how to do it so that you can do it better. And then practice. And I'm glad actually part of this discussion you're going to have, Dan is going to show you how to do your video. because that's a skill that you will need. You're on your phone, yes, you have an app, yes, but how do you move forward? How do you know when to cut, when, such things? So anyone can write, or anyone can generate great content, yes and no. The other thing is that people assume content creation is cheap and it's easy, especially organizations, they never, people don't think to budget for content creation because they think, oh, you just need a camera, shoot and go. It's not so easy. It's both yes and no. It could be easy when you have the gadgets. I mean, if you're doing it for yourself, but it's not easy if you want to do large scale quality work, because it requires human resources. It needs a designer, it needs an editor. It has a financial implication because you'll need to, to have costing for it. It needs tools, it needs devices, good camera, good fonts, and also software, something like Canva. If you want to pay for it, you need to, you need to have money set aside for it. Or if it's Adobe, search. So you need to know that content creation is not cheap and it's not easy. It takes time, it takes practice. And then people also assume that content marketing, once you've done your content, now you want to share it. It has a quick return on investment. I put in 100 shillings, I will get back 1,000 shillings. It's not that straight. And especially for brands, for people who are starting out, just because you're producing content, it does not mean that you'll get engagement immediately. It takes time. So it's very incremental. It requires consistency. So if you want to get into the content creation journey, you need to be very consistent. You're not doing a video today and then 6 months later you do so you need to be very, if that's your frequency, then stick to it. So every 6 months you're doing something, every 2 months you're doing something, so that. And then the other myth, the other set of myths that people have around content creation, the next slide, is that well, I'm seeing what Safaricom is doing, so maybe I can just copy what they're doing, their strategy, and then I should be okay. No, always localize for your audience. I mean, psychologists are different, social justice organizations are different, businesses are different. So you need to be able to localize your content for your audience. Don't get into the temptation of saying, oh, I've seen this guide, this is how they've been doing it, I will do that. No, it doesn't work like that. You have to tweak it for your audience. And then the other myth is that people always say, oh, all content should center around my business and about me. And you'll see this, you go onto a social media platform and everything is about us and we are awesome, we are good, we are, our products are the best. You will realize brands are moving away from being too promotional, and now they're engaging audiences, they're adding value, and they're letting themselves be vulnerable. And that's why you'll see brands, organizations saying, oh, look, this is our engineers, this is what they go through to put up a telephone mast, for instance. Being vulnerable and telling people, look, engage with us, let's hear, is it helping you? So that it's not just about me, but you're bringing in other people as well. So for content creators, the temptation will be there to say, oh, hi guys, welcome to my YouTube channel and I'm the best. No, you need to bring in other people, so that it's not about you, it's about other people. And then finally, the other myth people have is that, I should be on social media 24/7. I need to be there where my audience is, Sometimes no, sometimes it's about quality over quantity. Just because people are on social media 24/7 doesn't mean you have to be there 24/7. Take breaks, from content generation, step back, rethink, look at the content that you're really, you're producing, and how are people engaging with it, and then in that rethinking, you get new partners. So you can partner with other people, and then you can also process feedback. So maybe your audience is always asking, can you increase more lighting to your photos or to your videos? So it helps you then to start thinking of how to become better. So those are the myths. And pretty much the end of the presentation. So my story, I've been telling stories for close to 15 years. No, I'm not very old. I'm just 32 years old. Just in case you're wondering, oh, 15. So how old is she? I'm just 32. I've been telling stories for different platforms. And for me, I'm moved by, content that makes people stop and they ask themselves, okay, I didn't know that. Can I learn? Can I help? Can I step, the call to action. So, I currently work at Safaricom, but I've worked at UNEP as a content and as a social media consultant. Before that, I worked with researchers and scientists at the African Population and Health Research Center. That's APHRC. It's based in Kitusuru, works across the continent. So my role was working with scientists and researchers to help them tell their stories, generate their content. Before APHRC, I was a journalist at the Daily Nation. and Really Nation Media Group, and where I told multimedia content for, within Kenya, in the region and globally. And and before that, I was a student at the University of Nairobi, and Liz Orembo was one of my colleagues in our communications class. So thank you very much for the opportunity. I hope you learned something. So the references for where I got some of the content that I've shared, the final slide. So feel free, if you need to reach out, my contacts are there. More than happy to engage, to help you think through your content generation journey, your storytelling. So thank you very much. Asante.
Thank you so much, Eunice, for an incredibly rich and insightful session. I, for one, have learned so much. I was in the myths box, honestly, and thank you for debunking some of them. I feel like I can be a better content creation from that session. I think before we move to the next session, I think it would be important to take in a few questions. And I see Liz has her hand up. So Liz, you could go first. Thank you. Feel free to use the chat box to ask questions or raise your hand. Yes, Liz.
Thank you so much, Eunice, for that wonderful session. Even our expectations were high up, and you went over as always. So as Eunice has said, Eunice was my classmate, and we were. Can I say we attended the same clubs together in the university? So actually, her journey started way back, because in those clubs, she's the one who would be responsible for writing bulletins, writing stories in those small pamphlets, even before she joined Nation Media. Eunice, since you've been too modest and sold in your presentation, I'd just like you to tell us about Kalunde Lands. I've been seeing that on Instagram, and it's really great content, because I'm learning a lot from it. And your journey, your side content creation, how you do it on the go, how you post things on Instagram and any other platform that you do.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Liz. Okay. So for the work that I do at Safaricom, it's my 8 to 5. I tell other people stories. I'm always interacting with businesses. I'm always interacting with people who are using Safaricom products. And so more and more, whenever I would meet up with some of these guys, there's a question that kept, sticking in my mind. People are always asking, how did you even think about this? How did you even get into this? What is the story behind the story? And so that's what I set out to do for myself. I said, I am going to look for creators. The moment you see, let me give an example. You see, let's say something like this, you see something that someone has made something like this, for you, it's the final product. You only see this, but there's a whole thought process, there's a whole creativity process behind any of these products. Think of the earrings that you're wearing, think of the sweaters, everything. So the content creators have a story to tell, but most times you only tell the story of, look, their product looks like this. And that's exactly what I wanted to do. And I wanted to do. I want to tell the story of content creators who have been able to turn their passion into a lifestyle and a living. Why am I doing this? Because nobody ever gets to hear from them. Sometimes media houses will try and they'll tell you, oh, this is where they started and this is what they did, but they never go in depth. So for me, for Kalunde Lands, and Kalunde is my middle name actually, for me, it's to learn the process of making a candle, the process of creating a podcast, the process of so for me, that's the thing I've set out to do. I'm starting out, I have 7 episodes now. Another one is going up by end of this week. So I track different, and I go onto my social media. If I see someone is doing artwork on, I don't know, they've done a painting, I reach out to them and ask them, would you be interested to tell me how you do this? Can I see you doing this? From conceptualization up to the end of the project. So that's what I'm doing. And my dream for this is that, it will get continental. I'm pretty ambitious. I'm seeing it getting all continental and telling African stories with, Kalunde Lands, or it could be called something else, Lands or something. And for me is to be able for people to understand the creativity process. And so when you're buying a product, you're buying that story as well. So that's Kalunde Lands for you. So I have Kalunde Lands where I'm learning. I have Kalunde Talks where I do such talks, where I'm doing actually a podcast. Because for me, I always say, when you say I'm a multimedia storyteller and you can only do text or you're only doing video, then what about a podcast? So that's Kalunde Lands for you. That's Kalunde Talks. So there's a lot of Kalunde things going around that I want to try and do. And just learn. If I make a mistake, I mean, it's a lesson. If I learn, then I bring it on such platforms and I share how I do it and why I do it. And I'll tell you this, for Kalunde Lands, I actually use my phone. I record most of the videos on my phone. So I get them on my phone, download them, and then I work with a videographer who then helps me to edit it. Because I know I might be good to get the story, but I might not be the best person to edit that video. So I appreciate that they have different talents. So I work with different people. So I have an illustrator who does the illustration for what Kalunde Lands is about. So someone else. So for me, get the story, put it in one place, have someone else help me to edit. So your phone, friends, is a very, very powerful tool for you to use. Yeah.
Thanks, Eunice. I see a couple of questions on the chat box. I'm just going to read them for you. So Ashnat is asking, is there anything like having or posting too much content? And her second question is, what role does consistency play with good content creation?
So I'll tell you this about whether it's too much or too little content. Think about it. Think of content like salt. When you're eating your meal, you just want just enough, not too little, because then you'll keep looking for the salt in your taste buds, and not too much because you won't eat, you'll be sipping water throughout. So it's the same thing with the content posting. Don't have too much. And here too much is, how would this look like? Don't post every 3 hours, because if you're posting every 3 hours, it means that you'll need to have content for every 3 hours for the whole day, for the whole week. So my advice always is, the temptation would be there, oh, I have all these videos, I can do all these things, no. Have a frequency, and your audience learns from you. If they can tell this podcast comes out every month, then they will expect every month to wait for it. So then it gives you time, a buffer period for you to go find content, edit, etc. I'll give you an example with Kalunde Lands. Kalunde Lands, I started my recording of all this content, most of this content last year in November. But I only launched in February of this year because I needed time to say my consistency. How when will I be posting this? I'll be posting this every month. So for me, every month works. Where I work at Safaricom, we have a Safaricom newsroom, a great platform where we tell beautiful stories, that shows technology and people and solving solutions and solving problems. How frequent do we post? We do at least every week. We have 3 stories. 3 multimedia stories. So it could be a video, it could be a photo story, or a text story. So every week there are at least 3. Sometimes we actually do 1, sometimes we do 5, but every week we say 3. So I would suggest for you, look at your content or look at what you want to do and ask yourself, how frequent can I sustain this over a period of a week, or a period of, so that you're not posting too much, because then your audience becomes, they're like, okay, highly likely they'll say, oh, but I know what you're going to tell us. What new are you going to show us? So I would suggest, if you want to do a personal thing, do, if you can, every 2 weeks would be the best platform, best way, because then gives you time also to rethink and hear what your audience is saying. And then, so tied on to your question, question 1 goes on to consistency. You have to be consistent. Always under promise, over deliver. If you're going to tell people, I'm going to be doing something, I'm going to do, for instance, now I do Twitter Spaces every other Monday. So last week on Monday, I did a Twitter Space around storytelling. I skipped this Monday. I do the next Monday, another element of storytelling. So consistency is that people will know every other Monday, Eunice has a story or is hosting a Twitter Space around content generation and storytelling. So then people know, because then you're building that expectancy from your audience. Otherwise, if you do today, then you wait, and then you do another 3 weeks, and then you do another, within the 3 weeks you've done twice, people cannot keep up, So you need to just define your consistency and stick with it, because nobody has the script. Nobody ever says you need to do it after every month. No, you decide your own consistency, based on the content that you have, the content that you'll need, and how long you need for you to put everything together. So define your consistency and stick to it. I mean, there are people who do daily, for Safaricom, for instance, on our social media, on our Twitter, we are always getting, we are either launching a product, you're doing something, someone is asking us a question. So then there's a daily engagement with our audience. It might not be the same for you if you're doing something that does not need that daily engagement. Yeah, so I hope those two questions have been answered. So I think of it as salt, and then not too much, not too little, and then keep at it, define it, and your audience will catch up with you.
Thank you so much, Eunice. I think that is very well articulated. We'll take one last question from Ankari, then we can move on to the next session. Thank you, Ankari. You can go.
Thanks, Eunice, for such an informative session. My question is, what advice would you give for moments that somebody has writer's block? Mm-hmm. And you have this consistency, so you're doing this every other Monday, and then one Monday you do not have any content. So what advice would you give?
Yeah. And I will tell you this, I get my very, fair share of writer's block and, creator's block, if I would call it that. So what you do, and that's why planning in advance works. So let's say, and that's why if you have content, you can spread it out over. So then it gives you time. If you have the writer's block, you still had content. I'll give you another example with Kalunde Lands. The story that we are running this week is a story that I shot, must have been in March of this year. But I knew that there's going to be a time when I'm going to be busy. My schedule is going to be chaotic, so I need something so just plan in advance. If you go to let's say you're going to a place and you went in for one story. So let's say you're going to interview someone about how they do something, a coaster like this. But you go there and you discover, in addition to them making coasters, they also make people's hair, for instance, or they do something, or they make earrings. So then when you're there, you record both content. So you say, I will record, or I will interview, or I'll speak to you about this, and then I will break it into two. So then what I will tell is this coaster story. Then the next one would be how this person makes earrings. So it gives you time for you to prepare for the next. But that said, sometimes the writer's block even comes after you've planned and everything. What I would say, it's okay if you take a step back and just say, okay, what do I need? Because you can't give without taking and replenishing. So give yourself time, take a break. And when you're taking such breaks, it would be nice if you could even think about collaborating with other people, so that it's not just you. Again, you remember what you talked about, self-promotion. It's just about me and I'm awesome and I'm the best. Then we can have a partnership, or you're going to have someone who does something similar. Then they can help you. Then they can plug in when you're having your writer's block. So then the content pipeline is still flowing. Nobody knows that there's a writer's block because everything just feels like it's moving. So plan in advance, create content in advance. And sometimes you don't even need to do, if you're a podcast person, maybe you just need to do a short 500-word article or a 300 words infographic, for instance. So if you're doing your research about something and you come across an interesting report, you can turn that into, you can reshare it when you would have otherwise done your podcast. Then you can reshare it on your platform, so that you have your people still engaging with you. So there are different ways of doing this. The other way for you to deal with writer's block is you could repurpose some of the content you've done already. So you're thinking, wow, I don't know what else I can talk about storytelling this week. What can I do? You can go back and say, I'm doing a Twitter thread about the 5 things you need to know about storytelling from an article you did or a video that you did. So then you can still create that pipeline flowing without actually doing new things, especially when there's a writer's block or a creator's block. Hope that's answered.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. I think in any industry or whatever area that you're in, you often find yourself that you experience that quote unquote writer's block, where you feel like you can't articulate some of your expression very well as you have had in the past. But I think those are really, really cool hacks and tips to sort of manage that. So thank you very much, Eunice. Again, very insightful, very rich. I think Carol had asked something about the notes being shared, and I think, Eunice, you had mentioned that we will share these notes with the participants, and in case they need anything, to reach out to you, that you've given your contact. So in case of any questions that they may have, they should feel free to contact you.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Eunice.